Hello, reading room. How are you? It is. That's my singing voice. No, it's my sing along voice. February 12th. It is day 311. I don't know why I keep doing that. Goalpost. Kick your best kick. Stuff like that. Okay, let's get going. We have our booby hearts there. On the page, this is no page numbers. Oh, they're there. It was covered up by the you-know-what. The book heart. Albans, Minnesota, 1929. It actually works with the arrows too, that does. On Monday morning, I get up early and wash my face in the kitchen sink before Mr. and Mrs. Byrne are up. Then braid my hair carefully and attach two ribbons I found in the scrap pile in the sewing room. I put on my cleanest dress and the pinafore, which I hung on a branch by the side of the house to dry after we did the washing on Sunday. At breakfast, lumpy oats with no sugar. When I ask how to get to school and what time I'm expected to be there, Mrs. Byrne looks at her husband and then back at me. She pulls her dark paisley scarf tight around her shoulders. Dorothy, Mr. Byrne, and I feel you are not ready for school. The oats taste like congealed animal fat in my mouth, like the Furina we ate. I look at Mr. Byrne, who is bending to tie his shoelaces. His frizzy curls flop over his forehead, hiding his face. What do you mean, I ask. The children's aid. Mrs. Byrne clasps her hands together and gives me a tight-lipped smile. You are no longer a ward of the Children's Aid Society, are you? We are the ones to determine what's best for you now. My heart skips, but I'm supposed to go. We'll see how you progress over the next few weeks, but for now we think it best you to take some time to adjust to your new home. I am adjusted, I say, warmth rising to my cheeks. I've done everything you asked of me. If you're concerned I won't have time to do the sewing, Mrs. Byrne fixes me with a steady eye and my voice falters. School has been in session for more than a month, she says. You are impossibly behind, with no chance of catching up this year, and Lord knows what your schooling was like in the slum. My skin prickles. Even Mr. Byrne is startled by this. Now, Lois, he says under his breath. I wasn't in a slum. I choke out the words. And then, because she hasn't asked, because neither of them has asked, I add, I was in the 4th grade. My teacher was Miss Urig. I was in the chorus, and we performed in an operetta, Polished Pebbles. Polished. The funny thing about it is that could be a Polish joke. Are you going to see the play Polished Pebbles? Look at Ludy. Look at you. Look at you feeling all better. I know. She also got a treatment. And every time she gets a treatment, she feels better. Every time I get one, yeah. Polished Pebbles. We performed an operetta, Polished Pebbles. They both look at me. I like school, I say. Mrs. Byrne gets up and starts to stack our dishes. She takes my plate even though I haven't finished my toast. Her actions are jerky and the silverware clanks against the china. She runs water in the sink and dumps the plates and utensils into it with a loud clatter. Then she turns around, wiping her hands on her aprons. You insolent girl, I don't want to hear another word. We are the ones who decide what's best for you. Is that clear? And that's the end of it. The subject of school doesn't come up again. Several times a day, Mrs. Byrne materializes in the sewing room like a phantom, but she never picks up a needle. Her duties, as far as I can see, consist of keeping track of orders, handing out assignments to Fanny, who then doles them out to us, and collecting the finished garments. She asks Fanny for progress reports, all the while scanning the room to be sure the rest of us are hard at work. So a country bumpkin into slavery and knowing it. You know, there is a big difference in the curtness of Mrs. Schachter, or whatever her name was, and the coldness of Mrs. Byrne, right? Wow, how could you be so... And, you know, this orphan girl, she does absolutely remind me of me. You know, there's a lot of characters that we've read about, and this was me. She was me. Because you are, as a child, innocent. And so, with innocence, you don't fight back. With innocence, if you're a curious girl, you ask questions, right? With innocence. So what she says is with pure innocence. And had you been born into a family where you could ask questions, you know, relatively, you know, maybe there were some that you were kind of shooed away from, but it is not, I mean, once again, the clear system of spiritual destruction by Mrs. Byrne. You bitch. I am full of questions for the Byrnes that I'm afraid to ask. What is Mr. Byrne's business exactly? What does he do with the clothes the women make? I could say we make, but the work I do, basting and hemming, is like peeling potatoes and calling herself a cook. Where does Mrs. Byrne go all day, and what does she do with her time? I can hear her upstairs now and then, but it's impossible to know what she's up to. Mrs. Byrne has many rules. She scolds me in front of the other girls for minor infractions and mistakes, not folding my bed linen as tightly as I should have, or leaving the door of the kitchen ajar. All doors in the house are supposed to be shut at all times unless you're entering or leaving. The way the house is closed off, the door to the sewing room, the doors to the kitchen and dining room, even the door at the top of the stairs, makes it a forbidding and mysterious place. At night, on my pallet in the dark hall at the front of the stairs, rubbing my feet together for warmth, I am frightened. I've never been alone like this, even at the Children's Aid Society in my iron bed on the ward. I was surrounded by other girls. I'm not allowed to help in the kitchen. I think Mrs. Byrne is afraid I might steal food. And indeed, like Fanny, I have taken to slipping a slice of bread or an apple into my pocket. The food Mrs. Byrne makes is bland and unappealing. Soft gray peas from a can, starchy boiled potatoes, watery stews, and there's never enough of it. I can't tell if Mr. Byrne really doesn't notice how dreadful the food is, or whether he doesn't care, or if his mind is simply elsewhere. When Mrs. Byrne isn't around, Mr. Byrne is friendly. He likes to talk with me about Ireland. His own family, he tells me, is from Sallybrook near the East Coast. His uncle and cousins were Republicans in the War of Independence. They fought with Michael Collins and were there at the Four Courts building in Dublin in April of 1922 when Brits stormed the building and killed the insurgents, and they were there when Collins was assassinated a few months later near Cork. Collins was the greatest hero Ireland ever had, don't you know? Yes, I nod, I know, but I'm skeptical his cousins were there. My da used to say every Irishman you meet in America swears to have a relative who fought alongside Michael Collins. My dad loved Michael Collins. He sang all the revolutionary songs, usually loudly and out of tune, until Ma'am would tell him to be quiet, that the babies were sleeping. He told me lots of dramatic stories about Kilmainham jail in Dublin, for instance, where one of the leaders of the 1916 uprising, Joseph Plunkett, married his sweetheart Grace Gifford in the tiny chapel just hours before being executed by firing squad. 15 were executed in all that day, even James Conley, who was too ill to stand, so they strapped him to a chair and carried him out into the courtyard and riddled his body with bullets. Riddle his body with bullets. My dad talked like that. Ma'am was always shushing him, but he waved her off. It's important they know this, he said. It's their history. We might be over here now, but my God, our people are over there. We might be over here now, but by God, our people are over there. Ma'am had her reasons for wanting to forget. It was a 1922 treaty leading to the formation of the Free State that pushed us out of Kinvara, she said. The Crown forces, determined to crush the rebels, raided towns in the county Galway and blew up railway lines. The economy was in ruins. Little work was to be had. My da couldn't finish a job. Well, it was that, she said, and the drink. You could be my daughter, you know, Mr. Burns tells me. Your name, Dorothy. We always said we'd give our own child someday, but alas, it didn't come to pass. And here you are, red hair and all. I keep forgetting to answer to Dorothy, but in a way, I'm glad to have a new identity. It makes it easier to let go of so much else. I'm not the same Neve who left her gram and aunties and uncles in Kinvara and came across the ocean on the Agnes Pauline who lived with her family on Elizabeth Street. No, I am Dorothy now. Let's pick that up just a pinch. Dorothy, we need to talk, Mrs. Byrne said at dinner one evening. I glanced at Mr. Byrne, who was studiously buttering a baked potato. Mary says that you are not, how should I put this, a particularly quick learner. She says you seem resistant, defiant. She's not sure which. It's not true. Mrs. Byrne's eyes blaze. Listen closely. If it were up to me, I would contact the committee immediately and return you for a replacement. But Mr. Byrne convinced me to give you a second chance. However, if I hear one more complaint about your behavior or comportment, you will be returned. She pauses and takes a sip of water. I am tempted to attribute this behavior to your Irish blood. Yes, it is true that Mr. Byrne is Irish. Indeed, that's why we gave you a chance at all. But I would also point out that Mr. Byrne did not, as he might have, marry an Irish girl for good reason. The next day, Mrs. Byrne comes into the sewing room and says she needs me to go on an errand into the center of town, a mile's walk. It's not complicated, she says testily when I ask for directions. Weren't you paying attention when we drove you here? I can go with her for the first time, ma'am, Fanny says. Mrs. Byrne does not look happy about this. Don't you have work to do, Fanny? I just finished this pile, Fanny says, placing a veined hand on a stack of ladies' skirts, all hemmed and ironed. My fingers are sore. All right then, this once, Mrs. Byrne says. We walk slowly on account of Fanny's hip through the Burns' neighborhood of small houses on cramped lots. At the corner of Elm Street, we turn left onto Center and cross Maple, Birch, and Spruce before turning right onto Main. Most of the houses seem fairly new and are variations of the same few designs. They are painted different colors, landscaped neatly with shrubs and bushes. Some front walkways go straight to the door, and others meander in a curvy path. As we get closer to town, we pass multi-family dwellings and some outlying businesses, a gas station, a corner shop, a nursery stocked with flowers, the colors of autumn leaves, rust and gold and crimson. I can't imagine why you didn't memorize this route on the drive home, Fanny says. My girl, you are slow. I look at her sideways, and she gives me a sly smile. The general store on Main Street is dimly lit and very warm. It takes a moment for my eyes to adjust. When I look up, I see cured hams hanging from the ceiling and shelves of dry goods. Fanny and I pick up several packs of sewing needles, some pattern papers, and a bolt of cheesecloth. And after she pays, Fanny takes a penny from the change and she gets and slides it toward me across the counter. Get yourself a stick of candy for the walk back. The jars of hard candy sticks lined up on a shelf hold dazzling combinations of colors and flavors. After deliberating for a long moment, I chose a swirl of pink watermelon and green apple. I unwrap my candy stick and offer to break off a piece, but Fanny refuses. I don't have a sweet tooth anymore. I didn't know you could outgrow that. It's for you, she says. On the way back, we walk slowly. Neither of us, I think, is eager to get there. The hard grooved candy stick is both sweet and sour, a jolt of flavor so intense I almost swoon. I suck it so that it tapers to a point, savoring each taste. You'll have to get rid of that before we reach the house, Fanny says. She doesn't need to explain. Why does Mary hate me? I ask when we're nearly there. Pish, she doesn't hate you, child. She's scared. Of what? What do you think? I don't know. Why would Mary be scared of me? She's sure you're going to take her job, Fanny says. Mrs. Byrne holds her money tight in her fist. Why would she pay Mary to do the work you can be trained to do for nothing? I try not to betray any emotions, but Fanny's words sting. That's why they picked me. She smiles kindly. You must know that already. Any girl who can hold a needle and thread would have sufficed. Free labor is free labor. As we climb the steps to the house, she says, you can't blame Mary for being afraid. From then on, instead of worrying about Mary, I concentrate on the work. I focus on making my stitches identically sized and spaced. I carefully iron each garment until it's smooth and crisp. Every piece of clothing that moves from my basket to Mary's or one of the other women's gives me a feeling of accomplishment. But my relationship with her doesn't improve. As my work gets better, she becomes harsher and more exacting. I place a basted skirt in my basket, and Mary snatches it, looks at it closely, rips the stitches out, and tosses it at me again. The leaves turn from rose tinged to candy apple red to a dull brown, and I walk to the outhouse on a spongy, sweet-smelling carpet. One day, Mrs. Byrne looks up and down and asks if I have any other clothes. I've been alternating between the two dresses I came with, one blue and white checked and one gingham. No, I say. Well then, she says, you will make yourself some. Later that afternoon, she drives me to town, one foot hesitantly on the gas pedal and the other at erratic intervals on the brake. Proceeding forward in a jerky fashion, we end up eventually in front of the general store. You may choose 3 different fabrics, she says. Let's see, 3 yards each. I nod. The cloth must be sturdy and inexpensive. That's the only kind that makes sense for she pauses, a 9-year-old girl. Mrs. Byrne leads me over to a section filled with bolts of fabric, directing me to the shelf with the cheaper ones. I choose a blue and gray checked cotton, a delicate green print, and a pink paisley. Mrs. Byrne nods at the first two choices and grimaces at the third. Mercy, not with that red hair. She pulls out a bolt of blue cambric. A modest bodice is what I'm thinking, with the minimum of frill. Simple and plain, a gathered skirt. You can wear that pinafore on top when you're working. Do you have more than one pinafore? When I shake my head, she says, we have plenty of ticking fabric in the sewing room. You can make it from that. Do you have a coat or a sweater? The nuns gave me a coat, but it's too small. After the fabric is measured, cut, wrapped in brown paper, and tied with twine, I follow Mrs. Byrne down the street to a woman's clothes shop. She heads straight for the sale rack at the back and finds a mustard-colored wool coat, several sizes too big for me, with shiny black buttons. When I put it on, she frowns. It's a good deal, she says, and there's no sense in getting something you'll outgrow in a month. I think it's fine. I hate the coat. It's not even very warm, but I'm afraid to object. Luckily, there's a large section of sweaters on clearance, and I find a navy blue cable knit and an off-white V-neck in my size. Mrs. Byrne adds a bulky too large corduroy skirt that's 70% off. That evening at dinner, I wear my new white sweater and skirt. What's that thing around your neck? Mrs. Byrne says. And I realize that she is talking about my necklace, which is usually hidden by my high-necked dresses, and leans closer to look. An Irish cross, I say. It's very odd looking. What are those hands? And why does that heart have a crown? She sits back in her chair. That looks sacrilegious to me. I tell her the story of how my grandma was given this necklace for her first communion, and passed it down to me before I came to America. The hands clasped together symbolize friendship. The heart is love, and the crown stands for loyalty, I explain. She sniffs, refolds a napkin in her lap. I still think it's odd. I have half a mind to take it off. Come now, Lois, Mr. Byrne says. It's a trinket from home. No harm to it. Perhaps it's time to put away those old country things. It's not bothering anyone, is it? I glance over at him, surprising that he's sticking up for me. He winks at me as if it's a game. It's bothering me, she says. There's no reason this girl needs to tell the world far and wide that she's a Catholic. Mr. Byrne laughs. Look at her hair. There's no denying she's Irish, is there? So unbecoming on a girl, Mrs. Byrne says underneath her breath. Later, Mr. Byrne tells me that the wife doesn't like Catholics in general, even though she married one. It helps that he never goes to church. Works out well for both of us, he says. Albans, Minnesota, 1929 to 1930. So we're on the next chapter. That was kind of a long chapter. When Mrs. Byrne appears in the sewing room on Tuesday afternoon at the end of October, it's clear that something is wrong. She looks haggard and stricken. Her cropped dark bob, usually in tight waves against her head, is sticking out all over. Bernice jumps up, but Mrs. Byrne waves her away. Girls, she says, holding her hand at her throat. Girls, I need to tell you something. The stock market crashed today. It's in free fall, and many lives are. She stops to catch her breath. Ma'am, do you want to sit down? Bernice says. Mrs. Byrne ignores her. People lost everything, she mutters, gripping the back of Mary's chair. Her eyes roam the room as if she is looking for something to focus on. If we can't feed ourselves, we can hardly afford to employ you now. Can we? Her eyes filled with tears, and she backs out of the room, shaking her head. We hear the front door open and Mrs. Byrne clatter down the steps. Bernice tells us all to get back to work, but Joan, one of the women at the Singers, stands up abruptly. I have to get home to my husband. I have to know what's going on. What use is it to keep working if we won't be paid? Leave if you must, Fanny says. Joan is the only one who leaves, but the rest of us are jittery throughout the afternoon. It's not easy to sew when your hands are trembling. It's hard to tell exactly what's going on, but as the weeks pass, we begin to catch glimmers. Mr. Byrne apparently invested quite a bit in the stock market, and the money is gone. The demand for new garments has slowed, and people have taken to mending their own clothes. It's one place they can easily cut corners. Mrs. Byrne is even more scattered about and absent. We've stopped eating dinner together. She takes her food upstairs, leaving a dissected chicken leg or a bowl of cold brisket and a chunk of brown glutinous fat on the counter with strict instructions that I wash my dish when I'm done. Thanksgiving is like any other day. I never celebrated it with my Irish family, so it doesn't bother me, but the girls mutter under their breath all day long. It's not Christmas. It's not American to keep them from their families. Maybe because the alternative is so bleak, I've grown to like the sewing room. I look forward to seeing the women every day. Kind Fanny, simple-minded Bernice, and quiet Sally, all except Mary, who can't seem to forgive me for being alive. And I like the work. My fingers are getting strong and quick. A piece that used to take an hour or more, I can do in minutes. I used to be afraid of new stitches and techniques, but now welcome each new challenge. Pencil sharp pleats, sequins, delicate lace. The others can see that I'm improving and they've started giving me more to do. Without ever saying it directly, Fanny has taken over Mary's job of supervising my work. Be careful, dear, she says, running a light finger over my stitches. Take the time to make them small and even. Remember, somebody will be wearing this, probably over and over until it's worn through. The lady wants to feel pretty no matter how much money she has. Ever since I arrived in Minnesota, people have been warning me about the extreme cold that's on the way. I am beginning to feel it. Kinvara is rain-soaked much of the year, and Irish winters are cold and wet. New York is gray and slushy and miserable for months, but neither place compares to this. Already we've had 2 big snowstorms. As the weather gets colder, my fingers are so stiff when I'm sewing that I have to stop and rub them so I can keep going. I notice that the other women are wearing fingerless gloves, and when I ask where they came from, they tell me they made them themselves. I don't know how to knit. My ma'am never taught me, but I know I need to get a pair of gloves for my stiff cold hands. Several days before Christmas, Mrs. Byrne announces that Christmas Day, Wednesday, will be an unpaid holiday. She and Mr. Byrne will be gone for the day, visiting relatives out of town. She doesn't ask me to come along. At the end of our workday on Christmas Eve, Fanny slips me a small brown wrapped parcel. Open this later, she whispers. Tell them you brought it from home. I put the packet in my pocket and wade through knee-deep snow to the privy, where I open it in the semi-darkness, wind slicing through the cracks in the walls and the slit in the door. It's a pair of fingerless gloves knit from a dense navy blue yarn and a thick pair of brown wool mittens. When I put on the mittens, I find that Fanny lined them with heavy wool and reinforced the top of the thumb and other fingers with extra padding. As with Dutchie and Carmine on the train, this little cluster of women has become a kind of family to me, like an abandoned foal that nestles against cows in the barnyard. Maybe I just need to feel the warmth of belonging, and if I'm not going to find that with the Byrnes, I will find it, however partial and illusory, with the women in the sewing room. How beautiful, right? I mean, really, how beautiful. The human spirit that in one way or another continues to strive like that flower that keeps popping up through the cement in the inner city, showing you that there's beautiful life out there. Love it. By January, I am losing so much weight that my new dresses, the ones I made myself, swim on my hips. Mr. Byrne comes and goes at odd hours, and I barely see him. We have less and less work. Fanny is teaching me how to knit, and sometimes the other girls bring in work of their own so they won't get crazy with idleness. The heat is turned off as soon as the workers leave at 5. The lights go off at 7. I spend nights on my pallet wide awake and shivering in the dark, listening to the howling of the seemingly endless storms that rage outside. I wonder about Dutchie, if he's sleeping in a barn with animals, eating only pig slop. I hope he's warm. One day in early February, Mrs. Byrne enters the sewing room silently and unexpectedly. She seems to have stopped grooming. She's worn the same dress all week, and her bodice is soiled. Her hair is lank and greasy, and she has a sore on her lip. She asks the singer girl, Sally, to step out into the hall, and several minutes later, Sally returns to the room with red-rimmed eyes. She picks up her belongings in silence. A few weeks later, Mrs. Byrne comes for Bernice. They go into the hall, and then Bernice returns and gathers her things. After that, it's just Fanny and Mary and me. It's a windy afternoon in late March when Mrs. Byrne slips into the room and asks for Mary. I feel sorry for Mary then, despite her meanness, despite everything. Slowly she picks up her belongings, puts on her hat and coat. She looks at Fanny and me and nods, and we nod back. God bless you, child, Fanny says. When Mary and Mrs. Byrne leave the room, Fanny and I watch the door, straining to hear the indistinct murmuring in the hall. Fanny says, Lordy, I'm too old for this. A week later, the doorbell rings. Fanny and I look at each other. This is strange. The doorbell never rings. We hear Mrs. Byrne rustle down the stairs, undo the heavy locks, open the squeaky door. We hear her talking to a man in the hall. The door to the sewing room opens, and I jump a little. In comes a heavy-set man in a black felt hat and gray suit. He has a black mustache and jowls like a basset hound. This the girl? He asks, pointing a sausagey finger at me. Mrs. Byrne nods. The man takes off his hat and sets it on a table by the door. Then he pulls a pair of eyeglasses out of the breast pocket of his overcoat and puts them on, perched partway down his bull nose. He takes a piece of folded paper out of another pocket and opens it with one hand. Let's see. Neem Power. He pronounces it Nem. Peering over his glasses at Mrs. Byrne, he says, You changed your name to Dorothy? We thought the girl should have an American name. Mrs. Byrne makes a strangled sound that I interrupt as a laugh. Not legally, of course, she adds. And you did not change her surname? Of course not. You were considering adoption? Mercy, no. He looks at me over his glasses, then back at the paper. The clock ticks loudly above the mantelpiece. The man folds the paper and puts it back in his pocket. Dorothy, I am Mr. Sorensen. I'm a local agent of the Children's Aid Society, and as such, I oversee the placement of homeless train riders. Oftentimes, the placements work out as they should, and everyone is content. But now and then, unfortunately, he takes his glasses off and slips them back into his breast pocket. Things don't work out. He looks at Mrs. Byrne. She has, I notice, a jagged run in her beige stockings, and her eye makeup is smeared. And we need to procure new accommodations. He clears his throat. Do you understand what I'm saying? I nod. I am not sure I do. Good. There's a couple in Hemmingford. On a farm outside of town, actually, who have requested a girl about your age, a mother, father, and 4 children, Wilma and Gerald Grote. I turn to Mrs. Byrne. She is gazing off somewhere in the middle distance. Though she's never been particularly kind to me, her willingness to abandon me comes as a shock. You don't want me anymore? Mr. Sorensen looks back and forth between us. It's complicated. It's a complicated situation. As we're talking, Mrs. Byrne drifts over to the window. She pulls aside the lace curtain and gazes out at the street, at the skim milk sky. I'm sure you have heard this is a difficult time, Mr. Sorensen continues, not for the Burns, but for a lot, not only for the Burns, but for a lot of people. And well, their business has been affected. With a sudden movement, Mrs. Byrne drops the curtain and wheels around. She eats too much, she cries. I have to padlock the refrigerator. It's never enough. She puts her palms over her eyes and runs past us into the hallway and up the stairs where she slams the door at the top. We are silent for a moment, then Fanny says, that woman ought to be ashamed. The girl is skin and bones, she adds. They never even sent her to school. Mr. Sorensen clears his throat. Well, he says, perhaps this will be for the best for all concerned. He fixes on me again. The Groats are good country people, from what I hear. 4 children, I say. What do they want? Why do they want another? As I understand it, and I could be wrong, I haven't had the pleasure to meet them yet. This is all hearsay, you understand. But what I have gleaned is that Mrs. Groat is once again with child, and she is looking for a mother's helper. I pondered this. I think of Carmine, of Macy, of the twins sitting at our rickety table on Elizabeth Street waiting patiently for their apple mash. I imagine a white farmhouse with black shutters, a red barn in the back, a post and rail fence, chickens in a coop. Anything has to be better than a padlocked refrigerator and a pallet in the hall. When do they want me? I'm taking you there now. Mr. Sorensen says he'll give me a few minutes to collect my things and goes out to his car. In the hall, I put my brown suitcase from the back of the closet. I pull my brown suitcase from the back of the closet. Fanny stands in the door of the sewing room and watches me pack. I fold up the 3 dresses I made, one of which, the blue cambric, I haven't finished. Plus my other dress from the Children's Aid. I add the 2 new sweaters and the corduroy skirt and the mittens and gloves from Fanny. I just as soon leave the ugly mustard coat behind, but Fanny says I'll regret it if I do, that it's even colder out there on those farms than it is here in town. When I'm done, we go back in the sewing room and Fanny finds a small pair of scissors, 2 spools of thread, black and white, a pincushion and pins, and a cellophane packet of needles. She adds a cardboard flat of opalescent buttons for my unfinished dress. Then she wraps it all in cheesecloth for me to tuck in the top of my suitcase. Won't you get in trouble for giving me these? I ask her. Peesh, she says. I don't even care. I do not say goodbye to the Burns. Who knows where Mr. Byrne is, and Mrs. Burns doesn't come downstairs, but Fanny gives me a long hug. She holds my face in her small, cold hands. You are a good girl, Neve, she says. Don't let anybody tell you different. Mr. Sorensen's vehicle, parked in the driveway behind a Model A, is a dark green Chrysler truck. He opens the passenger door for me, then goes around on the other side. The interior smells of tobacco and apples. He backs out of the driveway and points the car to the left, away from town and toward a direction I've never been. We follow Elm Street until it ends, then turn right down another quiet street where the houses are set back further from the sidewalks until we come to an intersection and turn onto a long flat road with fields on both sides. I gaze out at the fields, a dull patchwork. Brown cows huddled together, lifting their necks to watch the noisy trucks as it passes. Horses graze. Pieces of farm equipment in the distance look like abandoned toys. The horizon line, flat and low, is straight ahead, and the sky looks dishwater. Blackbirds pierce the sky like inverse stars. I almost feel sorry for Mr. Sorensen on our drive. I can tell this weighs on him. It's probably not what he thought he was signing up for when he agreed to be part of the Children's Aid Society. He keeps asking if I'm comfortable, if the heat is too high or too low, or too low or too high. When he learns I know almost nothing about Minnesota. He tells me all about it. How it became a state just over 70 years ago and is now the 12th largest in the United States. How its name comes from a Dakota Indian word for cloudy water. How it contains thousands of lakes filled with fish, all kinds, walleye for one thing, catfish, largemouth bass, rainbow trout, perch, and pike. The Mississippi River starts in Minnesota. Did I know that? And these fields, he waves his finger toward the window, they feed the whole country. Let's see, there's grain, the biggest export. A thrasher goes from farm to farm, and neighbors get together to bundle the shocks. There's sugar beets and sweet corn and green peas. And those low buildings over there, turkey farms. Minnesota is the biggest producer of turkeys in the country. There'd be no Thanksgiving without Minnesota. That's for darn sure. And don't get me started on hunting. We've got pheasants, quail, grouse, white-tailed deer, you name it. It's a hunter's paradise. I listen to Mr. Sorensen and nod politely as he talks, but it's hard to concentrate. I feel myself retreating to someplace deep inside. It is a pitiful kind of childhood to know that no one loves you or is taking care of you, to always be on the outside looking in. I feel a decade older than my years. I know too much. I have seen people at their worst, at their most desperate and selfish, and this knowledge makes me wary. So I am learning to pretend, to smile and nod, to display empathy I do not feel. I am learning to pass, to look like everyone else, even though I feel broken inside. Well, I would have to say, Christina Baker Kline, you have gone to the heart of Orphan Train. In a book, in one book, you get to the heart of Orphan Train, and that is a wonderful skill. That is for sure. This is Dr. Annette Feravich, where we are going on our 4 days off. So it'll be 4 days before we read and start on day 7 of our Orphan Train book, a novel by Christina Baker Kline. Thank you so much for this novel. Thank you so much for your insight and the way that you put words together that in ways that are unfamiliar to me. You can feel how sometimes the word patterns aren't as familiar to me, but really just a great effort of strength in my mind. Dr. Annette Feravich, we have completed February 12th, day 311 in our classroom. Thanks so much for joining me. Enjoy your 4 days off. Hopefully you have given it some thought. Enjoy your Valentine's Day. Happy birthday. Enjoy your birthday, Laura. Thanks so much again for seeing me through another big giant goose egg. Oh, no, not a goose egg, but 1 minute, 43 seconds on average tuning in. Thanks so much for joining me again. No matter what, we're still here working through the disappointment to bring you a healthier mind, a healthier body, and a healthier spirit. Thanks.